So name your favourite TV show right now. Be honest, would your colleagues or co-workers have ever heard of it? Probably not, right? And this all sounds normal. But if you go back 40 years, it would have sounded really strange. Because people really did used to listen to and watch the same things. You go back to the music charts from 50 years ago, from the mid-1970s. Because long before I was born, I've heard of pretty much all these songs. I can sing them. There was a time when millions of people heard the same song on the same day, watched the same show on the same night, laughed at the same jokes the next morning. But today, algorithms decide what we hear, what we see. But one thing in the world I think is operating completely differently to all of this, and that's football. Football is still shared in a world where pretty much nothing else is, and I think that makes it all the more important and exciting. If you look back at the UK in the 70s, there were 3 main TV channels. That was the entire media universe, and if there was a big show on, everyone watched it, everyone spoke about it the next day. Then the internet came along, the sort of desktop internet, the wired internet, and then the smartphone internet, where 5 members of a family could be in different rooms watching completely different things. First it all looked like freedom, infinite music, infinite show, and in many ways it's wonderful, but something subtle happened, which is that we didn't just gain choice, we lost this synchronization. Spotify doesn't show me what it shows you. Netflix doesn't show us the same films, YouTube doesn't show us the same videos. And 2 people can open the same app at the same time and exist in completely different universes. We all live together and exist together, but we all scroll separately. You know, there's one thing that does break through, there's one thing that does kind of interrupt those personal universes. One thing that makes entire countries stop what they're doing at the same moment, and that's football. Not highlights or clips or whatever else, but actual live games. And that's because this live synchronicity is so important to sport. You know, you can binge a series later, you can listen to an album whenever you want, but as soon as that final whistle blows, there's very little value really in the highlights or watching the game again. You want to consume it live. You either sort of feel it in the moment and experience it with everyone else, or you kind of miss the moment entirely. You know, you see a spoiler, you see what the result is, and it means way less. And this all creates something pretty rare now, which is this shared time, this shared existence, this cultural synchronicity, which has been lost in so many other fields. And during the 22 World Cup final, that amazing match where Argentina beat France on penalties, 3-3, Messi finally winning the World Cup. WhatsApp recorded the biggest spike in messages in its history. That didn't come from a celebrity death or any musical or TV event or from anything political or in the news. It came from football. Billions of people reacting at the same time. Phones lighting up in bars, in living rooms, in airport lounges, and wherever else talking about this game. There was absolutely no point in trying to experience the same moment an hour or a day later. And this works across countries, across cultures, across languages. You know, language is kind of irrelevant to all this. You know, at the same moment in an age of personalised culture, football creates these shared moments and still does. Other sports can do, but football is just so much more universal than every single other one. You know, algorithms are brilliant at serving you what you want, but football isn't really about that, right? It's about what actually happens for better or for worse. It's often about uncertainty. You know, you can support a different team, you can follow a different league, you can kind of mute the commentary or choose a different camera angle, but fundamentally what a football match is and the way it exists isn't really personalisable like so much else in the cultural world these days. You know, it doesn't show you some tailored version of reality, it shows you this one version of reality that everyone else is consuming. And of course you can clip it up and talk about it in a million different ways that is algorithmically dictated in all sorts of ways, but I think in the essence of it, in a world of individual feeds, football is doing something else that's almost kind of radical in a way. And I think that's why football feels bigger than sport right now, which is the subject that I'm so interested in as a journalist. You know, on the one hand, it's because politics keeps entering sport. If you look at Trump and the upcoming World Cup, if you look at the previous World Cup in Qatar, the one before that in Russia with Vladimir Putin, 2034 the World Cup in Saudi Arabia, these things are all so political. And politics just seeps into football in a way it just didn't 20 or 30 years ago in the same way. It's almost impossible to escape, even if you're just someone who likes supporting your team, watching goals, whatever else. Politics is everywhere. But the other reason I think football matters so much more than just sport is because it plays this much bigger role in shared culture. It isn't just entertainment, it's kind of the last place where collective emotion exists in real time. And looking forward to the World Cup in the summer, that will be happening all over the world in this incredibly intense way that isn't really replicated by anything else anymore. We don't gather around the same TV shows, we don't watch the same radio stations. Even like major news events are filtered to us in personal feeds in all sorts of different ways. But a big football match has the power to make 1 million people, even 1 billion people, look at the same thing at the same time. You know, the World Cup will be the biggest shared event that humanity has ever seen until the next one. And I think all this really matters because shared moments are how strangers feel briefly connected. They're how societies feel like societies in an age when people just spend a lot of time scrolling on their phones. They're how the conversations start the next morning without explanation. Where once we might have been discussing TV shows and music, there isn't much left like that anymore. So football hasn't just sort of survived the algorithm, it's become pretty much the last place the algorithm can't really control. And I think that's partly because the very nature of football and the way it is structured. I think this will still be true in 20 or 50 years' time. God knows what will happen to technology then. The synchronicity is just so important. So I recently published this book, More Than a Shirt, How Football Shirts Explain Global Politics, Money and Power. And this is the topic I'm obsessed with, right? Football, not just transfers or tactics, but what it means beyond that for culture, for society, the role of history and politics. Football is culture, it's identity, it's memory, it's power. And yet, in a world where all our feeds are completely different, football is something that makes us all look at the same thing at the same time. And I think that's really powerful and exciting. And in this completely fragmented world, football is pretty much the last bit of shared culture we have left.